Snow fell thick and silent over the Wyoming plains, smothering every sound beneath a white stillness that felt almost holy. The wind howled across the ridges, gnawing at the corners of the old ranch house where a single lantern still burned. Inside, a man sat by the fire, his broad shoulders bent and his hands stretched toward the flames. His name was Caleb Trask, a rancher, a loner, and a man who'd known the kind of winters that could take both life and sanity. Tonight, though, was different. The storm was worse than any he could remember. He'd been out mending fences when it started, caught miles from home, the snow blinding him until he stumbled upon the old trapping cabin by the creek, a place he hadn't used in years. But as he forced the door open, rifle in hand, he found he wasn't alone. A figure stood inside, dark against the firelight, a woman, wrapped in furs, her long black hair spilling over her shoulders. Her eyes were sharp and fierce, and for a moment Caleb thought he was seeing a ghost. The woman didn't move, only watched him with a guarded stillness. "You're on Apache land," she said finally, her voice steady despite the cold that crept between them. Caleb lowered his rifle a little but didn't let his guard down. "This land's been empty for years," he replied. "Ain't no one here but ghosts and coyotes." She stepped closer, her breath visible in the frigid air. "Then you should leave. The storm doesn't forgive trespassers." Caleb almost laughed, though the sound came out rough and tired. "Ain't going nowhere tonight, lady. You walk out there, you'll freeze before sunrise." He closed the door behind him, stamping snow from his boots. "You can stay on your side, I'll stay on mine. I ain't looking for trouble." The woman said nothing, only turned back to the fire. For a long time they sat in silence, listening to the wind batter the cabin walls. But as the hours passed, the temperature dropped lower and lower. The woodpile was nearly gone. Caleb added the last log and cursed under his breath. "That's it," he said. "After that burns down, it's gonna get cold fast." The woman's eyes flicked toward him, thoughtful now, her breath misting in the air. "You have no more wood. Not unless you got some hidden under that blanket," Caleb said. She studied him, then slowly stood. "There's one way," she said quietly. "Body heat. It keeps the cold away. You know this." Caleb blinked, unsure if he'd heard her right. "You mean, share my bed or freeze," she said, her tone neither shy nor playful, just a statement of fact. Her gaze held his, unwavering. The crackle of the fire filled the silence that followed. Caleb felt his pulse quicken in his throat. She was right, the cold would kill them both if they didn't find a way to stay warm. Still, the idea felt dangerous in ways the storm never could. He cleared his throat, looking away. "Ma'am, I don't think that's—" "Not for pleasure," she interrupted softly, "for survival." She moved closer, her face inches from his now, the firelight painting her skin gold. "You'll die out there alone. So will I, but together." Caleb hesitated, torn between decency and desperation. He'd lived alone for years, since the war, since his wife and son died from fever. He'd forgotten what it felt like to be this close to someone, close enough to feel their warmth, their breath. The walls of the cabin seemed to close in, the wind screaming outside like a warning. Finally, he nodded once, slowly. "All right," he said. "But just till morning." The woman gave no answer, only pulled the blanket from the cot and spread it on the floor beside the fire. She lay down first, her movements calm, certain. Caleb hesitated a moment longer before lying beside her, careful not to touch. But the cold crept in. Fast, biting through his clothes. She shifted closer, her body pressing lightly against his, and he felt the shiver run through both of them. Outside, the storm raged on, hammering against the fragile walls of the cabin. Inside, their breaths mingled in the dim light, the line between survival and something deeper blurring with every heartbeat. Caleb closed his eyes, telling himself it was just for warmth. But the scent of her hair, the feel of her against him, and the quiet rhythm of her breathing made him realize he hadn't felt alive like this in years. And as the night deepened, he couldn't tell anymore if it was the storm keeping him awake, or her. By dawn, the wind had died down, leaving behind a silence so deep it rang in Caleb's ears. The fire had gone out sometime in the night, but the warmth beside him had not. For a long moment, he stayed still, eyes closed, feeling the slow rise and fall of the woman's breath against his chest. Then, realizing what he was doing, he shifted slightly and pulled away, guilt flickering through him like a spark. The woman stirred, her lashes fluttering open. Her dark eyes met his, calm but unreadable. "You're alive," she said softly. Caleb gave a rough laugh. That's something these winters don't often allow. He sat up, rubbing his neck. Storms passed. I'll get some wood, see about making coffee. He stood, but her voice stopped him. Wait, he turned. She sat up, the blanket falling from her shoulders, her hair a dark tumble over her skin. You still don't know my name, she said. Caleb hesitated. Didn't figure you wanted to tell me. She looked into the dying embers. My name is Naira, she said finally. My people once lived by the Red River. Until the soldiers came. He froze, realizing what she was saying. The army, she nodded slowly. They burned our village. My husband fought and died. I ran, with my daughter. Her voice caught, and for the first time, he saw the pain she carried beneath her steady calm. She was taken from me. 2 winters ago. Caleb's throat tightened. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I know what it's like to lose folks. Naira looked up sharply. Do you? He met her gaze. Wife and boy. Fever took him, long before I came here. He swallowed hard, staring into the pale light seeping through the cracks in the wall. Guess that's why I keep to myself. Ain't much left in me for talkin'. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the snow glittered under the first rays of dawn, the world reborn in cold and light. When Caleb finally stepped out to fetch wood, the air bit his skin like glass, but his chest felt strangely lighter. By midday, the cabin was warm again. Naira helped him fix the door, her hands steady and sure. She worked like someone who'd had to survive on her own for a long time. Caleb found himself watching her more than he meant to, the way her hair caught the sunlight, the strength in her movements, the quiet sadness in her eyes. At one point, she caught him staring. What? She asked. He flushed, looking away. Just, didn't expect to be sharing my cabin with someone like you, that's all. She smiled faintly. You mean an Apache woman? He shook his head. No, I mean someone still breathin'. That earned a small laugh from her, light but real. It was the first time he'd heard her laugh, and something in his chest stirred. He turned back to his work, trying to ignore it, but it stayed with him, like a fire that refused to go out. As the day faded, clouds rolled in again. A new storm was brewing on the horizon. Caleb watched it from the doorway, frowning. That one's meaner than the last, he said. You'd best stay another night. Naira's expression didn't change. You don't mind. He gave a small shrug. Wouldn't sit right, sendin' you off into that. When darkness fell, they built the fire high. This time, the silence between them wasn't sharp or heavy, it was easy, warm. Caleb poured 2 tin cups of coffee and handed her one. She accepted it with a nod. You're not like most white men I've met, she said suddenly. He raised an eyebrow. That good or bad? Good, she said. You didn't look at me with hate. He took a sip, then said quietly, ain't no room for hate out here. Cold and hunger'll take you quicker than any bullet. Her gaze softened. And loneliness. He looked into the fire. That too. They sat together long after the flames turned to embers. The wind howled again outside, but inside there was warmth, and something else, something that felt almost like peace. Caleb didn't fight it this time. When Naira's hand brushed his, he didn't pull away. Hours later, as the fire died down again, Naira whispered, I dream of her sometimes. My daughter. She was small, with eyes like the river after rain. Caleb listened in silence, then said softly, we'll find her. When the snow melts, I'll help you look. She turned toward him, eyes wide. Why? He hesitated, then answered honestly. Because no one should have to lose everything. Naira's expression trembled for a moment, then steadied. You're a good man, Caleb Trask. He shook his head, just tired of ghosts. The storm raged through the night again, but this time, Caleb didn't feel alone. He and Naira lay side by side under the same blanket, their breaths mingling, their hearts beating in rhythm with the wind outside. The world beyond the cabin was still cruel, still wild, but inside, something had begun to thaw. By morning, the storm was gone again. The land stretched white and endless, the air sharp with the promise of another day. Naira stood by the door, her fur cloak wrapped tight, ready to leave. You sure you want to go? Caleb asked quietly. She looked out at the horizon. I have to. But when the thaw comes. He waited. I'll come back, she said softly. If you still want me to. Caleb met her eyes and nodded once. I'll be here. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that meant hope, fragile but real. Then she stepped out into the snow, her figure shrinking against the endless white until she was